Ladies and gentlemen,
I hunger, coward.
You are now listening to Retro Radio.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Shane Monroe. Welcome to Retro Radio, your weekly real player source for classic arcade game emulation, information, and news. Well, folks, I was hoping to have a nice interview put together this week. Unfortunately, neither one of the folks I got back to me, so it doesn't look like I'm going to be running an interview this week. Instead, I'd like to take a look at the new release of MAME version 0.34, currently in beta production. It has a multitude of lots of new goodies. I'd just like to touch some of the highlights of this release. Probably the best game released in MAME this release is probably Flicky, compliments of Nicola. Flicky is one of those seriously addictive games. One of those ones where, sure, you could finish the level with minimum danger, but it really makes it worth your while to go in and live on the edge to get more points. Now, this sort of a trend can be easily seen in, say, Zookeeper, which is one of my all-time favorites for that very reason, or Peter Packrat, another one of my new favorites, compliments of MAME. In all of these games, there's a means to an end. You know, in Zookeeper, you gotta keep all the animals caged or at least stay alive until the counter runs down. More appropriately, in Peter Packrat, you as the rat scavenger all over the screen trying to find little shiny objects and bring them back to your nest. With Peter Packrat, your bonus multiplier goes up a lot if you bring more than one object at a time. So you're tempted to run all over the place, gathering up every object you can lay your hands on before you take him back to the nest, hence giving you the greatest points. Unfortunately, the more objects that you have and the longer you're out on the screen, of course, the greater the risk. It lends an excitement to the game. And that's what Flicky's all about. You play a little guy going around trying to get these little chickens and little baby chicks. And every time you get one, they start trailing behind you. And, of course, the more you get, the longer the trail, which, of course, makes you more and more susceptible to get hit. Well, if your opponents grab anywhere in your stay there, meaning you got to go back and get them again. Of course, your ultimate objective is to get your little chick safely to the area on the screen where you started from. Again, this sort of addictive gameplay, it's pretty rare, especially in today's games. You don't really get to see it. These are the kind of games that you just couldn't help but keep shoveling quarters in. What else is on the release list? Well, we've got the Neo Geo games, which there are too numerous to mention. There's a whole bunch of them, and some of them work, some of them don't, as you've probably already found out. You will need the Neo Geo ROM, which you can find at davesclassics.com. You can also find it at muviews.com. This will be dumped into your ROMs folder just like any other game, and it will get the necessary files together to play the Neo Geo games. And let's face it, there's a couple of pretty cool games out there. Probably T-Rally is probably one of my favorites so far that I've seen. It reminds me a lot of the old Amiga game Nitro, where you could crush innocent civilians on the side of the road and that sort of thing. Of course, the Neo Geo games do not have sound, so don't bug the authors about that. They're not implemented yet. Now, I'll tell you one game that really surprised me was Varth, and I'll tell you why it surprised me, because it's a Capcom game. Now, I know you guys know what I think about Capcom games, but I have to admit, Varth, I've always liked 1942, 1943, and this was a lot like it, just a little bit more modern. The graphics are actually pretty sweet. The gameplay's pretty good, and even the sound is implemented very well. Excellent driver by Paul Lehman. Let's see, what else do we have? Some other good stuff, a few more clones. What else do we got this release? We got Teddy Boy Blues. We got My Hero, Sega Ninja with Ninja Princess merged with that. A bunch of old 8080 games were added. Compliments of Al Casa. Tag Team Wrestling, which this is actually more like Matt Mania than Matt Mania was. Yeah. Okay. What else do we got this release? Calypso, Maximum RPM, which doesn't have any sound. Compliments of Aaron Giles. Pot of Gold, compliments of Nicola again. The Tin Star, Intrepid, Moon War 2. numerous other games in this release. There are some drivers, of course. If you've already been through the README, a lot of this is right from there. We do finally get the POW button on Mario Brothers to actually bump the screen like it's supposed to. It's funny, I hadn't even noticed that, and that's one of my favorite games. Yes, Sounding Gladiator, that was important. Let's see what else we got. Nicola got the original elevator action ROMs to work, which is good. I had to actually remove that from the FAQ now that it works. There's an additional CPU to emulate. Apparently that was part of the protection. We still don't have Frontline working, although now we do have a complete set of ROMs floating around. That's a good thing. Hopefully we'll get Frontline working. That's been one of my favorites. One thing for those of you who didn't get all the way through the README What's New, you can now proceed off the OK to continue screen at the beginning by pushing left and right on your joystick, and that will also get you out of that. So that's cool too. All in all, pretty good initial release. The proms issue that we talked about on the last show, I think there's 106 games that have proms added to them. And frankly, the easiest way I found to do it is to go over to arcadeathome.com, go on over there and pick up a little program called PromFix. And you just dump that over to your ROMs folder and then go into the PromFix folder and run that. And it'll automatically add all those proms to those 106 games. Kudos to Tim for that one. He is, of course, the author of Arcade at Home, one of the leading the emulator front ends for MAME. There's no real news on RetroCade this week, I'm afraid. We're still looking for RC1, Release Candidacy 1, to come anytime, hopefully with game save states. There's been talk on the developer list about changing the PCX output to JPEG, which I've got my opinions, but I've already voiced them, so I'll keep them to myself. As you may or may not know, Insert Coin and Retro Radio have moved to MonroeWorld.com, my new domain, which some folks speculated on the concept that I may want to be trying to make money with MonroeWorld.com, and that's kind of sad. I've never ever lifted a finger to make a dime off of MAME or RetroCade or anybody else. In fact, I've deliberately kept banners off my page, so it almost hurt my feelings to be called a money grubber like that. But no, you can rest assured that as long as MonroeWorld.com can stay free, it will be free. And the interface that's up there now is temporary. There will be another interface up there before long. And Insert Coin and, like I said, Retro Radio are being housed there, and Retro Radio will have its own homepage soon, so you can get to the other episodes, the last two. For those of you who have been missing out on Dave's news area,
let me tell you something. Let's just say that you get an old Karate Champ game, and you dump the ROMs and you make it into an emulator.
Sorry, I couldn't resist. Karate Champ is in the works. That's right, Karate Champ, probably one of the best of the classic arcade game fighting games. I'm not exactly sure how they're going to emulate it just yet because it was a two-joystick kind of game. Not so much different than Robotron or Smash TV or any of those other ones that use two controllers, but the controllers had to be used in conjunction with each other in order to get the moves in. And I'm kind of curious to see how they emulate that. That's something I would want to have to decide. Interesting emulation from Rain, the emulator that's bringing us currently Ninja Warriors. Again, one of the coolest classic games of all time. Rumor mill has it that they may be breaking the CPU open for getting a sound in that and many other games. I personally can't wait. I think Ninja Warriors is one of the coolest games ever made, especially the way they melded it across those three screens like that. You gotta love that. Dave's Classics, by the way, has screen snapshots of all the games that, or most of the games anyway, that are released in the new version of MAME. He also has a better portion of the ROMs up over there, even though some of them do have checksums, especially the Neo Geo games, they will have checksum errors, so that's normal. But nip on over to davesclassics.com and check out the good stuff he's got over there. He's added a lot of new stuff over the last couple of days and updated the work in progress page for MAME. That's really cool. This week I'd like to give you a little tip on the game Jackal. I know I've been chanting and ranting about Jackal since it came out. You're probably sick of hearing it, but I've got a cool little trick, little tip for you. We all know that in Jackal, when you drive around in the Jeep, you start off with grenades as your secondary weapon, and every time you pick up a certain power-up guy, you go up from there in weaponry. You go up to short-range missiles, then long-range missiles, then long-range horizontal exploding missiles, and then finally your last power-up is long-range diagonal exploding missiles, which just lets you just wreak all hell over everything. What you may not know is that while you're playing the game, there's a chance to pick up POWs as well as the power-up guys. And you can fill your Jeep up with a maximum number of men. Now, the idea is to deliver them into the helo pad where they'll get off and they'll get in the chopper. Now, you'll notice that you get points as you drop the guys off. Well, here's the tip. Position yourself where you're safe. Go ahead and clear all the enemies out of the immediate area of the helo. Then start dropping the guys off. Do not move while the guys are being released. The trick is you cannot move your joystick at all while all the men are getting off the Jeep. When all the men have gotten off the Jeep in sequence and the sequence hasn't been interrupted, you'll receive roughly 70,000 points, and you'll automatically be boosted to the maximum power-up, which is the 4-way exploding missiles. Really cool, but you got to watch out for the airstrikes. So position yourself where you can get to the airstrikes as well. And that's your handy tip of the week. To wrap the show up this week, I'm sorry it wasn't longer. There hasn't been much going on really lately, and unfortunately with my interviews bowing out, I don't have as much for the show as I would have liked to this week. I would like to put out an invitation to Nicola of the MAME development team. I would very much like to have an interview with you here on Retro Radio in regards to the development and progression of MAME. And I don't know how global this show is getting, but it seems to be becoming fairly popular. If anybody out there happens to know, be affiliated, work with, or knows how I can contact Don Bluth, the animator, who did the animations for Space Ace and Dragon's Lair, please pass along the idea that I would very much like to interview him for the show. Promise I'll keep it short and sweet. I've always been fascinated by the animation of that time frame. I've followed Mr. Bluth's career for quite some time, and it'd be a pleasure and an honor to interview you, sir, if you had the time. Mr. Bluth is working on a new PG-rated cartoon CGI mix called Planet Ice. I'm hoping that's going to be pretty cool. But Don Bluth was kind of the pioneer of classic Laserdisc gaming. As far as I know, those are the only two he had any contact with. I do believe his brother was involved with Dragon's Lair 2, Sullivan Bluth. And Dragon's Lair 2 has some really phenomenal scenes in it. If you know anybody who bought that Digital Leisure 3-pack with Dragon's Lair 2 in it, have him show you the scene where they're playing the classical music piece. Incredible. I'd play it for you here, and I probably will one of these weeks, but it definitely loses a lot of its translation when it goes to real audio, real player. But that's going to wrap it up, folks. Again, sorry this show is so short and there's not much to see and do, but I hope you'll come with us next week when hopefully I'll have another interview lined up. It's going to be exciting. Once again, thanks for listening. My name is Shane R. Monroe. Until next week, keep it retro.